All right. And we are live, everybody. How is everybody doing today? Let's see. W. Scott, I guess. Oklahoma in the house. Good to see you, Oklahomian. Not much to do there, but cool that you're here. Hola, hola. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. Obviously, today is episode 163 of Calibrated Live with Scott. I am your host, Scott, of course. Be sure, if you are new here, to go and click that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe before you leave this video or live stream today. I appreciate you all so much for doing that. It is the easiest way you can support me and my work. Halberstadt in Germany. Nice. Long time. Yes, it has been a long time. And if you guys want excuses, I have those, but also I don't really feel like giving any excuses. Sometimes I don't feel like live streaming. I was planning on doing a live stream yesterday and my neck was so messed up. I just slept wrong and I was just decided that I wasn't going to do it. So that happens sometimes. Streams get delayed 2 or 3 days. I also was busy with sports stuff this entire week. So a lot going on. Hello, Andrew. Phoenix, Ottawa, Canada. Robert, greetings from Serbia. Hello from Gibraltar, Rotterdam, Netherlands. Awesome, guys. Awesome. Frankfurt, Germany. Awesome. Yes, let me hear some excuses, damn it. Just not feeling good. I was actually in Chicago from Thursday until Tuesday. So that's what I was doing all over the weekend. I was just in downtown Chicago, which, by the way, the people in Chicago kind of suck, at least in downtown. The city's not too bad, and there's a lot to do, but wasn't my favorite. So, you gotta stop sleeping in the park, probably. Been busy with no job. I do have a job, actually, but I don't ever bring up my work. Work is just a thing, right? So I have a number of different things I do for work, which is time consuming. Russia, Moscow. Pleasure hearing you on time for once. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Love Chicago. Yes, it was nice, man. We went to the aquarium, beautiful aquarium there. I wanted to go to the field museum because I like dinosaurs, so didn't get to do that, but that's okay. Lots of good food, beautiful skyline too. It's a awesome architecture in the city. It's gorgeous. Hello from Santiago, Chile. Awesome, guys. Awesome. All right, now that everybody's starting to get in here, we can start talking about what we have going on today. So again, mostly this whole episode is just going to focus on Ukraine map updates. There are quite a few, as I have not done a live stream in 8 days. So we got a ton of those to get through. We're going to cook through those. We're going to talk about what's going on in the Middle East a little bit. But yeah, primarily a Ukraine-focused episode today. What's Scott's favorite dinosaur? Iguanodon is pretty cool. I like herbivores. That's sort of my thing. It's whatever the one is, Pachya something saurus, the one with the hard head and they run into each other. That's like me. So that's that's probably my favorite. But all right, let's go ahead and hop into the map update, shall we? Bing, bop, boom, 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 bop, bam. All right, let me get rid of this question here. Pachycephalosaurus. There we go. Thank you. See, this guy's on it. I love people with autism that just know hyper-specific facts about like dinosaurs or space or just anything like that. That's a W for you. Let's see. Let me hide this, and then we'll get right into these updates, shall we? Okay, everybody, let's go ahead and take a look at what's going on in Ukraine. So First and foremost, I'm going to just start this discussion by talking about what is actually, well, what is not what is actually happening, what is being openly admitted to now by the Ukrainians. So, again, just today, we had Zelensky come out and say that a ceasefire is desperately needed. It's obvious the lines are collapsing, and not in, I guess, when you say collapse, people think of like a Syria style collapse where it's like 12 days, the whole country just gone. No, these are highly prepared lines with a very developed army defending them, and they're not able to hold positions that they have consistently been able to hold throughout the war. So that's what I mean by a collapse. You have areas where cities are now being put into large pockets. The Russian forces in these areas are outflanking these cities. And the really negative aspect of this is not that, Ukraine is going to lose a city, because we could just have another Bakhmut that goes on forever, and then, they don't move into Chasiv Yar for months and months and months, almost a year after that. The important part about the cities that are being surrounded now is that there is nothing behind them to fall back on. So we look here at Minhorod and Pokrovsk, Pokrovsk, and we can see that the Russians have developed quite significantly on this northeastern flank. And I'm going to show you guys some footage from this road right here, from Dontetsk into Pokrovsk, where you can see a anti-drone net that was built to help logistics along this stretch of road. It has now been completely destroyed. I will show you that a little later when we actually get to this update. But I wanted to show you this because as soon as Pokrovsk and Minhorod are gone, there is nothing back here to defend until Pulverhad, right? You have no large cities that can be used for staging, for logistics. Pokrovsk is very, very, very important to the Ukrainians for a number of reasons. A primary reason is that it's holding back a significant number of Russian forces, right? So that's the first major issue. Once Pokrovsk falls, there's going to be a significant number of Russian forces here that are just unoccupied. They're going to be able to move into these regions. It's going to happen very fast. And so this is a major, major red alert for the Ukrainians right here. Minhorod and Pokrovsk cannot fall. And that's why Zelensky is trying to rush a ceasefire. If you remember back in March, April-ish time, the Russians and Ukrainians were meeting for negotiations on a ceasefire. Those negotiations did not work out at all because the Ukrainian position, the United States position, Europe's position, and Russia's position are just entirely different from each other. And nobody can agree on anything, even on the pro-Ukrainian side. So let alone the Russians and pro-Ukrainians agreeing on anything, that's not going to happen. But they're asking for another meeting in a week. I'm sure the Russians will accept said meeting. They will go. They will lay out the exact same thing they laid out last time. The Ukrainians will be aghast that the Russians haven't changed their position from 2 months ago, even though they are now in a greater position of strength. And, a ceasefire only benefits one side, right? And what the Russians are going to say yet again is that a ceasefire doesn't solve the root issues of the conflict. And if the root issues of the conflict are not solved, there will not be a ceasefire. So again, we're going down this same repetitive cycle of pointless negotiations. And let me remind you that the last negotiations were derailed by the Ukrainians or the West, whoever planned it and set the operation in motion, the Operation Cobweb or Spiderweb, where Ukrainian intelligence assets inside of Russia destroyed strategic bombers with FPV drones launched from vans. That derailed negotiations, right? I mean, negotiations weren't going anywhere. These next negotiations aren't going to go anywhere unless the Ukrainians leave the 4 oblasts, which I highly doubt. So you're seeing, again, the Ukrainians are in a shit position. And what they're going to try to do is what the West always does. We saw it with Israel. We've seen it multiple times in the past, using negotiations as a stall tactic to achieve a ceasefire, rebuild the Ukrainians, reestablish, stabilize, and then the fighting will continue. We saw it in 2015. We saw it in 2016. So this is nothing new. It is a long-time plan. We saw it with Hezbollah. We saw it with Gaza. We saw it with the Iranians. We just saw it with the Iranians. We just saw it. In the middle of negotiations, the U.S. allowed Israel to strike and kill nuclear scientists, military generals. They started striking civilian infrastructure. They were striking all of the nuclear facilities, which is a huge, escalation. And then the U.S. got directly involved. So if you're a Russian and you're looking at this, I don't know how you ever even remotely entertain negotiations in a realistic manner. I understand doing the diplomatic thing where you're pretending like you want to have a ceasefire, but all in all, the negotiations are just a desperate attempt by Ukraine to stop what is happening on the battlefield, right? So let's zoom in here and we'll actually go over some updates now. In the south, Russian forces have advanced out of Zelenopole or Zelenopol. I don't know how to pronounce this word right here, but Russian forces have advanced out of the village here up to the next defensive line that the Ukrainians are holding. They have also advanced out of Novopil down here towards the Zaporozhye Oblast border and Tamarivka. So this is just a small advance, just more of a general frontline update, but it is significant because once the Russians gain access to this road right here, past Ukrainian defenses, they will be able to come out this way and then basically backdoor a lot of the defenses down here, which will then provide an opportunity for the Russians to push for Holyai, which again is one of these crossroad villages. Very, very important. Moving up to the, I don't know what you want to call this. This is sort of just like it's like, I would just call it like the Vovocha front, because this is the Vovocha River right here. It's kind of being, it's where the outline of the map will end up being. And I did make a prediction about this, so I can pop that up. You can see that this is exactly what I predicted. The Russians are again moving out in the direction as shown. And that's just specifically because the river makes it very difficult to keep these areas supplied. Defending behind that river for the Ukrainians is going to be much more beneficial than trying to cross the river here and make it into these areas to defend. They're losing a lot of manpower to FPV drones, and the lack of suitable medical evac is also damaging to AFU survival rates after injury. So again, this area is moving quick. Just for everybody's information, the village of Novokatske has been captured by the Russians. Russian forces are also present in the village of Zelenesky. We move down here, just general advances through these fields in the direction of these villages. And I did not update this part of the map yet. I will very soon, but it is more than likely that the village of Voskrenska has been captured by the Russians as well, which brings them to the border of Dnepropetrovsk in another region. They are already on the border down here, but again, across the board, the Russians are reaching the Dnepropetrovsk region and then penetrating into said region, which again is going to be a crucial part of these negotiations that Zelensky's talking about. Now the Russians have another chip, right? They have a Sumy region incursion that they did not have during the last negotiations at such a size. The Kharkiv region is expanding for the Russians, and now the Russians are also in the Dnepropetrovsk region. So there's a lot at play, and the Ukrainian negotiating position is just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. All right, moving over to the north side of the Vovocha front. I guess we can call it the Novopavlivka front, because this is the general goal in this direction. Soccer field, by the way, which I don't think they call it soccer over there. So interesting, but whatever. We have a Russian advance here just north of Oleksandrivka into the Dnepropetrovsk Oblast yet again. So the Russians have penetrated into the Oblast from another area just south of the previous incursion and just northeast of another incursion here, which captured the village of Deshane. this is, again, important because the Ukrainians have been able to hold this area pretty well. So the fact that they're losing this is just puts them in a much worse position. As soon as this pocket closes, Novopavlivka will be basically the front line. And as you can see, again, geography and topography do not play into the Ukrainian hands here. I will take us over to a topographical map in just a second. But as you can see, the Solina River right here is quite wide, runs right through the middle of Novopavlivka, and will be an obstacle for the Ukrainians in maintaining the eastern half of this village. There's a couple of very important parts or pieces that affect the overall battlefield if this village is captured by the Russians. First and foremost, you can see that roads in this area are very, very sparse. And if we come east from the front line, the nearest north-south road connection is nearly 20 kilometers behind the front line. Not 20, sorry, more like 16 kilometers behind the front line. So that creates some difficulties for Russian logistics. Now, there are some fields that they can move through. There's some dirt roads and stuff like that, but major paved roads is what we're talking about. And when they connected Shevchenko or Novotrotsky to Andrivka, we saw a massive explosion of Russian advances out this direction because logistics just became easier here, right? We're about to see the same thing over in Novopavlivka, where the Russians now have access to the road. Logistics from Donetsk are going to run all the way up into Novopavlivka. And with that border region, which I can go ahead and do this and do this. We talked about this one forever ago, back when Seladove fell. Remember, we can see how much progress the Russians have made in this area now. And the green line that they've already passed, which was a previous prediction of mine. I actually might just delete that. Yeah. But as you can see, the Russians are about to fulfill this prediction almost specifically the way I predicted, just because of the topography of the situation or of the area. And this is going to have, it's just going to have tremendous negative impacts. If the Russians can gain access to this road, they will be able to push from the south to Mazova, which is the staging and logistics hub for the entire front over here. Udashne, basically the entire Dnepropetrovsk line north of Novomikhailivka, this area right here. So everything north of this is supplied by Mazova. If you can put pressure on Mazova, then this area becomes a lot easier for the Russians to push in, which they've actually had quite a difficult time in this area specifically. As I've explained multiple times, it is the shortest region for Ukrainian. I'm going to get rid of this real fast. It is the shortest region for Ukrainian logistics and the furthest for Russian logistics. Remember, Donetsk is way back here, but more importantly, Seladove, you can keep a lot of material in this area. Ukrainsk, you can move up material from here. So this is more of the staging area for the Russians. And we can just see how they have to travel 15 miles to the front, 14 miles to the front, which would be somewhere between 22 and 24 kilometers. And then for the Ukrainians, they just have to travel from Mazova, which is 10 miles, or from Pokrovsk, which is 1 mile to 7 miles. So they have a much easier time getting material to this section of the front. They have a much easier time staging. Counterattacks are a lot stronger from the Ukrainians in this region. And just the overall Russian military infrastructure here is just not as strong as we see in some other areas of the map. All right, moving up. Russian forces have advanced into the southern half of Udashne. Again, this is an area we have not seen a lot of progress from. Udashne has been a holdout for the Ukrainians, a great defensive position, and the Russians are very close to capturing that, which will open the door into Dnepropetrovsk region and towards Mazova as well. All right, moving over to Pokrovsk, where we have a very rough situation developing for the Ukrainians. I've been in some online debates recently with some pro-Ukrainians talking about how the Kursk and Sumy region, the Kharkov and Sumy region offensives by the Russians, I guess they're technically offensives, but by the Russians were failures. They were abject failures because they did not achieve their goals. Very funny because when the Kursk region closed, I made a prediction for the Sumy region. Actually, I will take you over to my. Oh no, I have it on my map. I don't even have to do that. Silly me. So here we can see the current layout of the Sumy region. It's something to this tune. And this was my prediction for the total captured territory that the Russians were going for, their overall goal. And as you can see, it's almost specifically what I explained. I mean, there's still a little bit of distance to go, but I also don't know the tactical situation here. And what this represents is the dominant high ground that overlooks the city of Sumy. And when I made this prediction, I specifically made it because we had already seen what happened in Vovchansk. The Russians pushed in, they took the area that the Ukrainians could not defend. And then once they hit Ukrainian lines, they just sort of stopped, right? And what did that do? It forced a massive chunk of the Ukrainian army to come up here and defend Vovchansk, right? You don't want to be defending Vovchansk. You want to be defending the east of the country down here, right? This is what you want to be defending, is all of this down here, not these two areas in the north, correct? And it's very funny that I'm having these arguments because it was not February or January when all pro-Ukrainian sources were criticizing the Kursk offensive. Any pro-Ukrainian source with a brain was talking about how it was just a waste of material. There was no strategic objectives in this region anymore. They accomplished their initial goal of surprising the Russians, potentially pulling some forces away from the east, which we never really saw. But then at a certain point, everybody was like, yeah, no, this is stupid. Why are we still here? Why are we wasting time on this when we're losing positions in the east, which are much more defensible? And what the Russians truly want is the east of the country. If the east of the country collapses, the entire Ukrainian military position becomes 10 times worse. So that was the status quo in January, right? That this was a mistake, that this was a waste of time. Now the Russians have pushed in and are forcing the exact same Ukrainian military concentration, maybe a little bit smaller because they're defensive and maybe not as much heavy equipment, like, moving into the Kursk region. Obviously, you're not going to be losing as many vehicles, artillery, and air defense isn't being brought up as close to the front. But we saw them just getting absolutely destroyed during the Kursk offensive. Now the Russians have pushed in. They have created a massive issue for the Ukrainians. There is a large Ukrainian military garrison in Sumy now to defend this. And those troops are no longer down here, right? So that's a huge thing. This right here, Russia has a numerical superiority in personnel, right? They can send troops places Ukrainians can't send troops just because they have the numbers. So entering over in the Kharkiv region, entering in the Sumy region with the minimal goal of getting into artillery and FPV range of Sumy creates massive issues for the Ukrainian army here. And one of those massive issues is rearing its head now, and that is Pokrovsk and Minharad. So we come over to the east, and this little pocket north of Mykolivka has been closed by the Russians. If Novo Ekonomishene falls, that's going to be horrific for the Ukrainians in this area. They're going to now be looking basically at the beginning of the Battle of Minharad. Their entire eastern flank has collapsed. It's just a really bad situation overall. More importantly than this village, though, or this town, are these two slag heaps right here, these industrial waste heaps. These are critical for the Ukrainians to hold on to. If they lose these, Russian forces will have complete fire control over every single logistics line into the village or the cities of Pokrovsk and Minharad. They already do have FPV control and barrel artillery control over this road. I will take you over to my Twitter now to show you the post that I was referring to. Yeah, right here. So that road from Radonsky into Pokrovsk that I was mentioning earlier, where there was an anti-drone net set up along it. Here you can see what that drone net looks like now. It's completely useless, other than maybe this hanging stuff might catch a drone. But the drone net has been burned off, has been removed, has been damaged, and repairs are impossible according to Ukrainian sources because of how dense Russian FPV traffic is over this area. So it's very, 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 very difficult. Going back to the map. So Russian forces control the areas in between these two large ponds. This creates sort of like a defensive barrier for them in this area. They are now putting pressure onto the high ground here and the high ground here. I will actually also take us over to the topographical map. I know it is all of your favorites, and we can look at the backside of Pokrovsk. Here we go. So the Russians are in between the two lakes right here, I believe. Yeah, they're in this area. So they're along here from Fyodorivka down all the way in between these two little ponds. If they advance south, they get the dominant high ground here, which overlooks Minhorod. If they advance north, they get the slag heaps right outside of Radonsky, which will allow them to control this road into Pokrovsk, which is the road that has the anti-drone net on that I showed just a second ago. It used to have it. It no longer exists. All right. All right. Okay. Okay. So moving up here to the north, there is an additional update along with this. Russian forces have captured the village of Novotrotsky up here and Boylkivka, as well as the village of Fyodorivka, and have advanced up to the village of Zatishok. So this is a fucking disaster. I don't know how else I can possibly explain this from military terms. This is the only logistics route. This crossroad right here is the most important area of the map for the Ukrainians currently. And as you can see, the Russians are within 3 miles, so 6 kilometers, 7 kilometers of the road. Less than that, it's 1.6. I always think it's 2.2, but I think that's kilos to pounds is 2.2 something. So I think it's 1.6 kilometers to miles. That would be 5 kilometers. So they're well within FPV range, well within mortar range, I believe, well within any number of munitions can reach this road. They don't necessarily have fire control over it, but the situation is worsening for logistics here day after day. And the E50 over here is basically not being used because of its proximity to the front. So only this back road is being used, and most likely through Hashini, they're running down this road and then into Pokrovsk and Minhorod. What you're going to see over the next couple of weeks is the Russians push up to this slag heap as well as this slag heap, and probably taking this village here. I don't know if they're going to be able to penetrate into this industrial zone. There is a large fortification and a defensive line outside of the town. They might be held up here. But again, remember what I've talked about the entire time. Scott is good at math. Remember what I've talked about the entire time, right? The goal is not territory. I don't know why I have to make this argument again and again and again and again. The Russians have committed to an attrition battle for over 2.5 years. It's not changing. Don't expect it to change. If the Russians can bleed the Ukrainians outside of Pokrovsk for 6 months, they're going to do that. There is no rush. There is no need to advance quickly. There's no need to end this quickly. The West is bleeding out over Ukraine. This is a real thing that's happening. And we've seen how bad it's gotten since that 12-day conflict between Iran and Israel. The situation is getting worse and worse and worse for the West in terms of their ability to supply Ukraine, particularly with air defenses. We just saw the U.S. cancel the Swiss Patriot order, which is an actual military industrial complex order, which is actually going to make the US money. That has now been scrapped. Those Patriot air defense systems will be going to Ukraine. So again, you have drawdown and order cancellation to keep Ukraine in the fight. This is what my last episode was titled, Keeping Ukraine in the Fight, for this specific reason, right? Germany is also talking about sending their own Patriot missile systems to Ukraine. They know they're not going to be attacked, so they don't necessarily need them. But this is years and years and years of military buildup just being expended and sent to Ukraine, where it will just immediately get hit by an Iskander or a Garand-2 or something of that nature, and will make it absolutely useless. Another huge problem with sending all of these Patriot systems is that they don't have the interceptors to run them, right? The most recent interceptor package that the US delivered to Ukraine included 10 interceptors. I'll say that again, 10. If anybody knows how air defense works, you fire 2 interceptors per target to achieve a probable shoot down, right? That means that 5 Iskanders can be targeted by this Patriot system with the ammunition that was delivered, and that's it. That's not even a day's worth of Iskanders being fired at Ukraine. They fire around 10 daily usually, unless it's a really slow day. So there's so many problems for the West right now, and if the Russians can just keep the Ukrainians here and just bleed them like they did in Bakhmut, they're going to do it again. And again, the Ukrainian inability to not step into a Russian bear trap for political reasons is something that I will never understand. I will never understand making political decisions constantly and never thinking about the military ramifications and how it puts you in a worse position militarily. If you're actually trying to, you can't fight the battle in Kiev and also fight the battle over here in Pokrovsk if you want to manage it and stay in a, not a winning position, but not necessarily a losing position. The Ukrainians are now in a losing position, right? You don't talk about ceasefires unless you're in a losing position. You don't demand meetings and negotiations unless you're in a losing position. So if the Russians can push out and control Dontetsk and the Ukrainians continue to just pump troops and material to try to hold Pokrovsk open like they did Bakhmut, so be it. There's no timeline. There is no rush. The goal is attrition. Attrit. The Ukrainians have a manpower issue already. They have horrible mobilization numbers. It's terrible. The Russians are at the door knocking, and somebody has to answer, and there's just not enough people to answer the doors, right? There's too many doors being knocked on. This is a massive door that's about to get its shit kicked in, right? And the Russians are already on the northern flank of it, or the northern edge of it, basically in the logistics town of Dontetsk. I don't know. I'll just compare this to Bakhmut for you guys, because Bakhmut is a battle that people kind of understand. This was basically when Ivanivsky was being pushed from the Russians over here at the racetrack, and then from the Russians over here in Klishchivka. That's sort of the situation that the Ukrainians are in Pokrovsk right now. The city is surrounded. There's one road in, and the Russians have fire control over that road. It's not as tight as Bakhmut was yet. It's getting there, but that's basically the situation. But also, the Russian military is completely different than the Russian military you saw in early 2023 when this was developing, when Bakhmut was finishing up, right? It's a completely different military. You don't have like Wagner PMCs fighting. Now you have the Russian military. You have glide bombs, which the Russians were not utilizing in early 2023 to the same degree at all. You have FPV drones, which were not being utilized at all. You have loitering drones, Garand-2s doing frontline strikes. You have so many new tools that are going to make this battle so much more costly for the Ukrainians. Also, Pokrovsk and Minharad are way bigger than Bakhmut, right? Bakhmut is very small in comparison. Maybe it's the size of Minharad, but a little bit smaller probably. These are huge cities here, and they are in a very, very bad situation. Okay, moving on to the northern portion of this sort of penetration across the highway here, Russian forces have advanced up into the village of Yar, which again just is a very small development, but it matters because there's less and less fortifications back here. And if the Russians can get into this area, the encirclement of Konstantinivka begins. And that's exactly the same event we're seeing down here. Remember, the Russians were back here in Novo Poltavka, and then they advanced rapidly out into Shevchenko. Things slowed down. Then they advanced rapidly into Kopcheva, and then they advanced rapidly now up to Fyodorivka. So this is all happening very quick in an area where the Ukrainians are holding desperately. They're trying to hold this as best they can. If we see the same thing develop over here into, Stepanivka, Dova Balka, or Rozkishine, we will see the beginning of the encirclement of Konstantinivka. And particularly if this defense fortification falls right here, it will be the beginning of the encirclement of Konstantinivka. All right. Moving slightly to the east, the village of Yablanivka has almost been entirely captured. This village is divided by a river. There are some parts of the village to the north of the river, so we do not count the entire village as captured. But as you can see, the Russian push to this reservoir is almost complete now. I will bring up one of my predictions. This prediction is now complete, guys, and they have come a long way. They have come a long way, and now they only need this. So this was my prediction for the Russians surrounding Torsk, right, or Donetsk, which is funny that that's not how the battle went at all. It's hard to predict how a battle will go exactly. I thought that they were going to surround it, but instead they just went right up the middle. But now we can see that the flanks have now developed, and as well to the north, they're also developing. I will go ahead and get rid of that. And as we're moving down here, we can see that there's not much more that the Ukrainians can really hold here. They still have a little bit of a line, and they're trying to keep this section open so that this doesn't fall down here, Shabanivka and Karanivka and Klebenbik. But as you can see, they have pushed up to basically the reservoir line. It's going to make holding this section much more difficult, and we are already seeing movement in the bottom of the pocket, which is exactly what I always talk about. The bottom of the pocket is the first area to collapse, as it is the longest point of logistics, and it is where the most pressure is always being put on any salient. Same over here in Pokrovsk and Mihrad. We might see the Russians capture these industrial heaps and then just penetrate into this area of Pokrovsk or this area of Minharad, and then the battle just begins. And then the Ukrainians are on the back foot, their flanks are exposed, it gets worse and worse, the whole city just kind of falls. That's probably what is going to happen, because that's what we saw in Bakhmut, that's what we saw in Torsk, that's what we saw in any basically major city battle that we've watched the Russians surround the city. All right, moving down here, the village of Novospassky has been a majority of it has been captured. Again, this puts this pocket into a very bad position. The Ukrainians have held this particular area very well for a very long time. When this falls, again, a lot of Russian forces are going to be freed up. This entire section is going to level out along this reservoir, and all of these forces can be redirected up towards Pleshchivka or Bilohora and this sort of pocket over here. So as soon as this closes, we're going to see more movement on this high ground ledge over here near Stepochke. All right, moving up to the Chasiv Yar front. Russian forces have advanced out of Chasiv Yar west now. So the Battle of Chasiv Yar is pretty much over. It's concluded for a majority. Is Scott on the kill list? No, but that's my long-term goal, baby. That's my long-term goal. And now they have advanced to the village of Masky over here. So this is, again, very important. It shows that an area that really the Russians should probably not be advancing into. Again, weakness presents itself, the Russians advance, and this just puts the entire Konstantinivka flank into a worse position. And I specifically said, I don't know if I made a prediction. I might add one. No, I did not. Yeah, no, I didn't. I might add one, but I do believe that the Russians are just going to push down this railroad right here. I've talked about this. Is it a railroad? Yeah, this railroad right here. They're going to push down it until, because it is along the high ground, until they reach the village of Stinky or Papazne. Once that happens, again, the city of Konstantinivka will be surrounded, and we will see the similar Bakhmut style road of life through, Druskivka and this other Druskivka right here. So just expect that to be surrounded in the exact same way, a similar way. So you have two major cities right here, major defensive points. Both sort of sit in low ground. Pokrovsk not so much, but Konstantinivka definitely sits in deep low ground. Once its flanks are compromised, holding the city is going to become extremely costly. And again, don't expect the Russians to just capture the city right away. It could happen, but why? Why send men into urban combat to die when you can sit out here and just destroy the Ukrainian army with FPV drones and glide bombs? It's so much easier just to level everything in your path and then move forward. All right, moving up to the Oskil front here. Russian forces have made a small advance north of Boroviskava and Drivka. Boroviska and Drivka. There we go. Just a small advance here, nothing particularly major. Although it does bring the Russians closer to the village of Borova here. Okay. Moving up to the Kharkiv region, and I actually do have a picture that I want to show you guys from my Twitter. I think I showed it to you on the last one. Don't know if I did, but I will show you on this one. So this was my prediction from back in February 9th. So I saw this opportunity for the Russians after they had crossed the Oskil River here. This was their bridgehead at the time, very small. It is much larger now. It goes all the way up to the Russian border and comes down almost to the very northern edge of Kupiansk. I predicted that the Russians were going to push in from these villages or these towns right here because they are connected by railroads. They have large rail lines, rail connections, train stations inside of them. Logistics is pretty easy out of these places. The red lines follow the only roads in the region, which all lead to this village right here, which I can't remember. Praikolotane. That's a rough one. But here, I'll make this a little bit bigger. But as you can see, the goal is to push in from this location along the road, push in from the Oskil bridgehead from the south, and then push in from Volochansk from the north whenever that happens. And then this one follows the villages on the northern part of this, right on the Russian southern border, Ukraine's northern border in the Kharkiv region, where it would then could connect. They could also just push through the fields. But as you can see, this is a dominant high ground position, although heavily forested, so the high ground doesn't add as much value. But most importantly, the reason why I picked this area back in February was because I saw that it was disconnected by the Severodonetsk River here, which makes it hard to keep logistically supplied. It is also a very sparsely populated area of the Kharkiv Oblast. So I predicted that the Russians were going to start an offensive here. And as we come back to our map, we can see that my prediction was nearly spot on. Russian forces have advanced on this edge of Volochansk, capturing this large forest plantation. This angle right here is going to be the last one that develops, by the way. The Ukrainians have the most defenses here. It's the shortest point of logistics. They've been fighting here for quite some time, and this whole area is just destroyed, flattened ruins. So don't expect a lot of progress from here until all of this starts to take shape. But up to the north here, coming out of the village of Volokhanovka, which I had talked about, as it does have that large train station right here for logistics. Very important for the Russians. There's also, I think, another train station somewhere else in this area. But either way, you can see that they can take the road basically directly into the northern part of the, or northeastern part of the Kharkiv Oblast. They can then push down along this road, capturing all of these little border villages, and then potentially pushing through the fields towards Prikoletone. The village of the Tarne up here in the north has been captured. This area was sort of isolated and is just a little nub that kind of goes into Russian territory. So easy for the Russians to capture, but it is directly in line with the direction that I had predicted that the Russians were going to enter from. So you have the Vovchansk incursion, which was already there. That this one does not matter as much. Moving to the south here, we have the more important incursion from Russian territory into northern Kharkov, where the Russians have already captured the village of Milove and now are advancing towards Ambrne and Katanej. Don't know if the J is silent or not. Don't know how to pronounce all of the Ukrainian words. Sorry, guys. But as you can see, another chunk of the forest has been captured. As soon as the Russians can capture this village and gain access to the road, they will again have an easy time running logistics out of the village of Valyuki, where we can see there is another train station somewhere. Where's the train? Train station, where are you? There's the train tracks, runs through there. There's a number of facilities here. Train station. There was a train station in this area. I know there was. This railroad track. Follow it. I don't know if there was another train station over here. But plenty of areas for a train to stop. You know, plenty of areas to run logistics out of. So that's why I made that prediction for that area. It just made sense. And the limited road access is also why it's important. Moving to the south, again, we have an additional Russian advance along this road right here, north of Krasny Pershe, towards the village of Kodoliazane, which again kind of follows directly with my path of approaching the village from the south, approaching the village from the east, from the west, and from the north. They're literally doing exactly what I had drawn up, which is cool. There's also reports that this bridge has been hit a number of times. This bridge has been hit as well as crossings down here to the south. So again, another area where you're not going to see incredibly fast Russian progress, but you're going to see consistent Russian progress. Mr. Scott, why does Russia not create more incursions on the northern border of Ukraine? Well, they are. I mean, this is, if you're looking at this part of the map, right, you have 1, 2, 3, come over here, 4 in Sumy, potentially another one over here, small to develop. But I literally just made a prediction where and then this goes with the arguments that I was talking about earlier with pro-Ukrainian accounts on Twitter. Don't be surprised when the Russians enter up in this area or over here and they fail to capture Chernihiv, is basically what I said. Don't be surprised when they fail to capture Chernihiv, because they're going to enter, they're going to create another pocket exactly like this, which forces a large contingent of Ukrainian troops and material to stay here to defend it. I don't exactly know where they'd enter from. I haven't taken a strong look at it. They might push for like the town of Semenkivka or something like that. I'm not 100% sure. I doubt they'll come in through Belarus, although that would be the optimal place to come in from. I don't think they want to involve Belarus in the war and, you know, open them up to strikes and stuff like that. I don't think that's part of the design right now. But if they would come in from the northern end of Russia right here, they will have a road that they can push down. And again, it's not really about capturing anything. It's about forcing a large contingent, a large garrison of Ukrainian troops to stay in this region. So I agree with you. I think they should. But I think there's also some hesitation in the Russian military to go quick and to do things aggressively. like overly aggressively. So we'll see. We'll see how it develops. Keep up the great work, Scott. Most cognate summaries, in my opinion. Well, you're a true gentleman and a liar, but that's okay. I appreciate the vote of confidence. I tried to get the information across as fast as possible, or as easy and simple as possible, but again, part of being retarded is that doesn't always work out the way you want. All right, and I think that is it for updates. Cool. Cognate? Is that what I said it right? I don't know if I'm getting laughed at. I don't know if I'm getting laughed at by you jokesters. What are your thoughts on the missing action on both sides? For the Ukrainians, that's a majority of their casualties are missing in action. So I don't know. I actually had a thing. Cogent. I'm just reading, boys. I'm just reading out here. I'm not proofreading. I'm just reading. Are you trying to create a fake impression that the Russians never lose? No, sir. Why do you never show Ukrainian counterattacks and Russian retreats? Never a single one. I just looked at Syriac's updates and there are 4 of them. Well, okay. You want to talk about Syriac maps? I have an extreme problem with Syriac maps. Syriac maps, not like a real problem with him. It's just the mapping style. He will update every single little geolocation. We can actually go over to his map right now. I'll bring it up. And we can talk about some of these and how little sense they make. And I do update when the Ukrainians actually go on the offensive, but they haven't really. There have been almost no counterattacks anywhere besides in the Sumy region, which I have updated. The map hasn't really moved that much. So let's go over to Syriac maps, and I will show you on his map what I know you're talking about. So there was this small push, which he just updated into Yalta. Again, you're talking about the Ukrainians crossing the Vovocha River, getting into this area, and then trying to hold this somehow? It makes no logical sense. Just because you have a geolocation of Ukrainians in an area does not mean that they have captured that area or that they are alive after the video was taken. Most of the videos we see are Ukrainians getting hit by FPV drones, and that's how you get Ukrainian counterattacks in said area. If it is a consistent update where you see a successful assault, then sure, I'll update it. But for me, there is no proof that the Ukrainians are actually in here besides a very old geolocation that happened almost a week ago that Syriac is using for this update, which is fine. He can do that. That's his map. It's his decision. I don't think that this is necessary. I don't think that this is actually factual. And I bet you within a week, this changes. This goes back. And this is a problem I have with a lot of mappers that do hyper specific updates on every single geolocation they get. I saw another one that he did. I can't remember right here. So he's saying that the Ukrainians counterattacked down into here. And when the map stops making sense from just a tactical perspective, how the fuck are the Ukrainians supposed to hold any of this? So you see an assault, right? An assault happens. A car drives down this road, gets blown up here. Syriac Maps is going to update his map like this. I disagree with it. I don't think it's necessarily true. I think it's just a guess based off of a single geolocation of a Ukrainian dying there. That's mostly what this is. So no, I'm not trying to give a false impression that the Russians are never losing. The Russians are taking losses every time they do an assault. They're on the offensive right now. They have a manpower superiority, a firepower superiority. It's not an even battle. The Ukrainians are not advancing all over the place. It's just not happening. There are very, very limited small counterattacks that do happen. And if they end up controlling an area, I will revert my map like I did in the Sumy region. But unlike the Sumy region, I do not believe that a single geolocation that is a kilometer deep into gray zone Russian territory is necessarily worth an update. Same goes for Russian advances. If I see a geolocation and it's just some Russian on a motorcycle gunning it down a road and he gets hit by an FPV, I'm not updating my map. I've done this a number of times. A specific example I can show you on my map that I was thinking about updating, but as I saw the geolocation, I disagreed with it, was down here in this village right here. I said that I had not updated it. It was likely that the Russians had captured it. But the geolocation I saw was from this edge of the town around this fortification where it was a Russian just getting hit by it was a grenade drop or an FPV. I don't know. I watched so many videos. I can't remember specifically. And it was a lone Russian soldier. So I have no evidence that the Russians are actually there, only that an assault occurred over these open fields and that a Russian died in this area. So no, I'm not trying to give a false impression that the Russians are winning. The Russians are winning. I don't have to give any false impressions. It's very clear that the Russians are winning. The Russians are advancing. The ratios of Ukrainian dead to Russian dead are wild. There's a wild disparity there. There's a reason why the Ukrainians are asking for a ceasefire, right? I'm not just making stuff up. I would not be doing that. My predictions are honestly generally correct. And I do update the map when the Ukrainians make an advance. I literally just pushed this back behind Andrivka. I actually should fix this. Back behind this little water feature right here. Something to this tune, right? So this is more or less what the Sumy region looks like. There's a ton of gray zone here. The Ukrainians do not control Andrivka either. Andrivka right here. It's just gray zone. And the Russians had just advanced down and recaptured all of Kindorivka. So, yeah, no, I do update. There's just not a lot of Ukrainian advances going on. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what fantasy accounts you're following. Even the Syriac updates are literally this big. And I look at his updates sometimes. Sometimes he does it for the Russians too, where the Russians will advance this much. And I'm like, this is not worth an update. This is not worth spending your time fixing your map and posting it because it's either going to be completely different tomorrow or it's not even real right now. Sort of the situation that I'm looking at. You know. All right. Thank you for your question. Marco, no question. Add a question in there, dude. I appreciate you though. Is there ever a scenario where Russia could operate with aircraft without standoff old school style? Maybe that's not a modern reality. It will be a reality once the West drops out, right? As long as the West is still providing Patriot systems and manpads, it's going to be very hard to see aircraft in a direct close air support role. You may see it if there's an emergency. We have seen it in the past when the Russians get into a bind. But the Russians have developed glide bombs. Why risk an aircraft when you can drop the bombs with the exact same accuracy from 60 kilometers back in your territory, right? Just easier. It's what the Russians should have been doing the entire time. The idea of close support aircraft in a war where you're fighting a modern army with modern logistics and basically support, like, it's great. If the US went to war with Iran, with Iran's current air defense network, how bad it was damaged and how poorly it was performing against Israeli aircraft, you would definitely see a close air support role if US troops or NATO troops or whatever were deployed into Iran. They would have to be, right? But in this sort of standoff war where the line is not moving a whole lot and there's not a lot of like emergencies happening, glide bombs are better, honestly, because you can drop 4 of them from very far away. They are just as accurate as if you were dropping them from directly above. We've seen how accurate they've become. They're almost spot on now. And you just do it from 60 kilometers away and you never risk your pilots or your aircraft. I think it's better that way. I don't think it's just a modern reality. I think it's just a situation to situation reality, right? If it's Russia against Armenia or Russia against Georgia or Russia against, I don't know, take your pick of any country that's isolated, small, and doesn't have a large combined air defense network that will be downing Russian jets, right? Russia is not fighting Ukraine anymore. All the S-300s have basically been destroyed. It's not the Ukrainian military at all. What it is it's NATO supplying and using Ukrainian meat, right? So if you have a superpower on superpower conflict, no, I would not expect attack aircraft or aircraft to be dropping bombs directly over, like we've seen in Syria from the Russians. I don't even think the Russians will do that in Syria anymore, by the way. I think they'll just use glide bombs because it was really just a missing piece of the Russian military, the PGMs, and now it's been developed because it had to be developed. I think Trump went to that island. Trump went to that island. I think that every single person of any political power, Congress, Senate, anybody in the administration, has basically been in some location that would provide blackmail. Now, I'm not going to say he's a pedophile or, it's not pedophilia because that's like little kids, but like older, kids, teenagers or whatever. I'm not saying he did anything on those planes or on the plane or on the island, but the fact that he's covering it up is a huge red flag. They have some blackmail on him, or it's so consequential to the entire establishment that they can't release it because literally every single person would be in trouble. That's how honeypot operations work. Epstein was going around intentionally to all of these people, inviting him to go places so that he could get blackmail. That's what they were doing. And that's why Epstein, a absolute nobody, was in contact with every leader from every country across the world. Like, what the hell are we talking about? How does this absolute just nobody have a $40 billion or $50 billion flat in New York? How does he have his own island? How does he have his own planes? Nobody talks about it. He was like a math teacher. It's the craziest thing. But yeah, I think it's just so systematic in our entire government, probably since the late 90s, late 80s, early 90s, that you're never going to see that list. I don't know why you guys are even concerned about it. Just assume that everybody you vote for is a pedo and that you're just choosing which pedo aligns with your political agenda the most, because they're all on the list. And the ones that aren't are the ones that are speaking out about it, right? If you're not on that list and you're not on that list, then you're the ones that are out talking about it. You're the ones that are voting against Israel. I think that's a great indication of who has not been invited to go on those plane rides and stuff like that, is who votes against sending aid to Israel. And that's not necessarily a direct indicator because AIPAC pays people to vote that way. So there can also be greed and selfishness involved. But yeah, it's surprising how the AIPAC aid, or the aid to Israel, is always passed like 200 to like 4 in that the Republicans pass it like 215 Republicans to like 4 say no, and then the Democrats it's like 3 say no and the 200 say yes, or whatever the numbers are. It's ridiculous. There's no arguments about where it goes on. All right, I have a couple of things to show you guys before we get out of here. I was just going to read an article. I know I'm the worst reader, public speaker in the world, but bear with me. Here we go. Cracks neck. Ukraine seeks a new round of talks with Russia. This is what I talked about earlier. And I'm just going to read it from the BBC's perspective, very pro-Ukrainian perspective here. All right. Ukraine has proposed a new round of peace talks with Russia, President Vladimir Zelenesky has said, in a move aimed at restarting negotiations that halted last month. Senior security official Rustam Umarov has offered to meet the Russian side next week, Zelensky said in his evening address, adding that everything had to be done to get a ceasefire. Why? Why does everything have to be done to get a ceasefire? I'm curious. You were winning last week. The 19th package of sanctions has just been leveled on Russia, and then their economy is done. It's over, right? You just got $10 billion in pledged support from the United States. By the way, that $10 billion is over the next couple of years on material that hasn't even been built yet. So a little asterisk there on that, but But everything has to be done to achieve a ceasefire, including blowing up Russian strategic bombers in the middle of your previous negotiations where you could have achieved a ceasefire. Wild talking points here. It's like they expect you to not remember what happened because most of us are idiots. Zelensky also repeated his readiness to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin face to face. A meeting at the leadership level is needed to truly ensure peace. Why the fuck is that necessary? Somebody explain to me why Putin has to meet Zelensky. They are not negotiators. They will get together to sign a piece of paper if that is necessary. Probably isn't. Why would you need to meet him? That raises red flags right there for me altogether. I don't know why you want to be in the same room with him. I think it's a propaganda thing. You get into the same room, you confront him, you make it angry, you make it newsworthy, right? If I was Putin, I would just be kicked up in a chair in Moscow and I would just be laughing. I would just be laughing at this. This is just a joke. The proposal came hours after Ukraine was hit with another widespread air bombardment by Russia, which killed 3 people. Also interesting that Russia's widespread bombardments of multiple Ukrainian cities resulted in 3 people killed. Doesn't even say civilians. It just says 3 people. The genocide unfolding. It's ridiculous. Hundreds of drones, dozens of missiles, and 3 people died. Okay. Interesting. I think 3 people died trying to get food this morning in Gaza, getting shot by Israelis. It's wild. It's wild how we talk about these 2 conflicts. 10 regions of Ukraine, including several cities, were hit in the night, Friday, blah, blah, blah. Ukraine's military said more than 300 explosives and dummy drones and 35 cruise and ballistic missiles had been used. But many were downed. Many were downed, except we have footage of all the explosions and everything, and cities just getting absolutely rocked by these drones. The drones have been doing significant damage to Ukrainian military facilities. But yeah, 3 people died. What's the ratio on that? 1 person for every 100 drones? That's crazy, dude. 1 person for every 12 cruise missiles or ballistic missiles? That's fucking insane. That's such a good combat ratio of civilian collateral damage. It's unbelievable that they would add this into the post. Can you imagine if the Israelis killed 3 people with this many munitions? We'd be like, turning a new leaf, man. It's awesome. Israel killed 3 people under the age of 1 today, I'm sure. Sorry, getting off track here. Earlier this week, U.S. President Donald Trump said the U.S. would send top-of-the-line weapons to Ukraine via NATO countries. Who fucking told you? The U.S. is pivoting, and they're going to push arms through Europe, and Europe is going to purchase them. Oh, called it. Getting tired of this, boys. I'm getting real tired. While also threatening Russia with severe tariffs if a deal to end the war is not reached within 50 days. Oh, the spooky tariffs. Trump also warned that the U.S. would impose 100% secondary tariffs targeting Russia's remaining trade partners. This is where it gets very interesting. So you're going to put 100% tariffs on China? Are you really going to go into another trade war with China after we just saw how that went for you in the last bout, like 4 months ago? You're really going to put 100% tariffs on India? Really? You're really going to do that? Are you really going to put 100% tariffs on Saudi Arabia, the Philippines, Indonesia? Yeah? Sounds like economic suicide to me. It sounds like you're trying to, this is like the quickest way I can see to decline U.S. hegemony is by just sanctioning and putting tariffs on everybody. All right, that's where I will leave that article though. And then other things I had to talk about. I think that's it. I think that's it for today. If you guys have some questions, go ahead and get some questions up. I will answer some questions now, but I am officially Done. Channel reported. Thank you. Sponsor giving a bad review. Awesome. I don't care. I don't care about the money. I don't care about my channel at all. I don't care. I'm a loose cannon with absolutely nothing to lose. It's dangerous. I'm a dangerous individual. Nobody tells me what to do. Nobody tells me when to do it. And nobody tells me what to say. So, Scott, the AMK stuff is strange. Yeah, if anybody doesn't know, AMK Maps just did his first live stream the other day and instantly got his channel banned. I have done 163 live streams saying stuff way more controversial and, you know, whatever than he did. But I think it's just because he like says that he's like a pro-Ukrainian. And I think that just gets a lot more hate than somebody who is just, you know, talking about the conflict and doesn't care. So, Scott, you watching the new Dexter? No, I'm not, but I'm very curious. Is it any good? I didn't watch the when he was in Alaska. I didn't watch that one. Wasn't really interested. I did see that he like killed a guy that was killing cab drivers. So I've seen bits and pieces like on social media, but I have not watched it. Are you pro-RU or pro-Ukrainian? I am neither. I am pro-US. I am pro-US staying the fuck out of places we're not supposed to be, including Ukraine, the Middle East, all of those areas. I am pro-beneficial US foreign policy for US citizens. I could give a fuck what happens in Ukraine. I have my predictions. I think I know what's going to happen in Ukraine, but I'm not Russian. I don't benefit from Russia winning. I actually lose. My position in the world, on the world stage, gets greatly diminished every time the US does one of these stupid fucking foreign policy moves, right? My dollar has less value every single time we print money. We are $37 trillion in debt. We can't pay our teachers. You know, our education system is shit by design. All we care about is, you know, having sex with kids and foreign wars. It's not what anybody voted for. It's not what anybody has ever voted for, but it just keeps happening. So no, I'm not pro-RU or pro-Ukrainian. I guess people would say I'm pro-RU because I'm very anti-Ukrainian. I think the Ukrainian government is abysmal. I think it is the worst human rights violator in a very long time that the US has supported. I think they're incredibly corrupt, but so are the Russians, right? I'm not making an argument that the Russians aren't that. The Russians are just established. They're very large. They have nuclear weapons. You know, they're a nuclear superpower. They're a huge part of the global economy. And it's just like two different things. It's like, this war doesn't need to be happening at all. So I'm pro-Russian in the sense that I don't think Russia started the war. I mean, they literally started it, but I think that they were basically forced into it by design. I was saying that, I mean, I've been talking about that since 2014, not on here. I haven't been doing that that long, but I've been talking about how this was eventually going to reach this stage where the war was going to erupt again. I knew that Minsk 1 wasn't going to work. It didn't. And then as soon as Minsk 2 came around, I said, well, that's not going to last. And it didn't. I said the same thing about Idlib in Syria in 2018. And look what happened there. Right? It takes years for these things to happen and develop. But yeah, no. So I do not think that the US should be sponsoring this. I do not think that this war should even be happening. And I think Russia would be very happy to have Ukraine as a trading partner instead of an enemy. It was a huge population and an ex-Soviet state that they had good ties with up until 2014. It's just US foreign policy getting innocent people killed. So in that realm, I guess I'm pro-Russian, but I'm not like rah pro-Russian rah. I did have a Z hat at one point, and so a lot of people think that I'm super pro-Russian or anything because of that, but it was just a cool hat. I also had a No Sleep Till Transnistria hat, pretty dope as well. I'm not going to say that those hats aren't cool, but it doesn't make me like pro-Russian. So. Are you a gooner or an edger? Definitely a gooner. Sorry. CIA are going to Scots. Bring it on. Bring it on, dude. Bring it on, because there's one of two things that happen. Either they pay me a fuck ton of money to just start saying something different, or I get in a shootout with the CIA. Either way, I'm going to be making headlines, and there's going to be conspiracies around me. So we good on it. Send them my way. Send Mossad my way. Hell, I'll have a conversation with anybody. Like I said, dude, I got nothing to lose. I have an okay life. Like, my life is good, but loose cannon. I will burn this whole thing to the ground for no reason, just because. Question: is the dead body ratio really that different as the ratio of recently exchanged dead bodies? Very good question. I actually have a. Did I not save it? Is it in my bookmarks? Aha! I have it. Oh wait, that's not the right one. Hold on. Let me go to my Telegram and see if I can find it over there. Because I know that somebody just posted it, and I was planning on showing it. It's just the list of the ratios. Who posted it? Gonna kill myself if I can't find it after talking about it for 5 goddamn minutes. I'm gonna kill myself. Okay, that's it. It's been decided. Today's the last day, everybody. All right, I don't see it, but I can just bring up the second to last one. There's a new one that shows all of the ratios, but I can't find it. So I'll just bring up this one, the old one, and we can talk about that. By the way, I'm on that Epstein list, so I don't want it to come out. We don't want that list to come out. I'm just kidding. But when you think about it, think about all of the people that are on the list, like that have had connections with him that have never like done anything. Like, that's also got to be a huge number of people. I think releasing the list would also create a lot of problems, because anybody associated with the list would instantly be associated with that. And it's just like, and it might not even be that. Like, I don't think Stephen Hawking was on that island doing anything nefarious. I honestly don't. Because I don't think he can do very much nefarious, but yeah. All right, let's get to this casualty conversation real fast. All right, so here is the casualty exchange rate, and there's another one missing here. The Ukrainians just recently on June 17th, or July 17th rather, exchanged, or maybe a day before that, exchanged 1,000 of their dead for 17 dead Russians. So here you can see the casualty exchange rate over the last couple of weeks. And the important part about this is that when we go back to the Russian casualties, when the Ukrainians were on the offensive, right here, July and August, we can see that the Russians had more casualties than the Ukrainians, right, in terms of returns. But we can see that it's 160 to 62, right? 160 to 44. So not nearly what we're seeing over here. I mean, these are, I would ignore the zeros, because these are all the bodies that the Russians just had frozen. But I mean, you can see how the ratio has just been getting more and more lopsided the entire time, and it's just getting worse and worse. And then 1,017. So it's not as bad as being shown, because obviously the Russians are on the offensive. Their losses are more recoverable. But to say that this is not an indication of anything on the battlefield, I think would be a tragic mistake. If the Ukrainians were doing better and killing more Russians, there would be more Russians' dead bodies to exchange, right? It's just gotten continuously lower and lower and lower, right? All right. What's in the box? That's bullshit. The war would have ended years ago if it were true. The reality is Russia is 2 to 3 times more losses. Okay. Let's just say you're absolutely right, and that this exchange rate means absolutely nothing, which is just a complete fallacy. Like, it's just a logical fallacy to say that this has no indication of what's happening in Ukraine. Because specifically, when we go back, we can see when Ukraine was on the offensive, and we can see that the ratio is different and in Ukraine's favor, right? So you're wrong. But outside of that, we can just talk about, let's just say Russians' casualties are 3 times higher than Ukraine's. Let's go with that. Does Russia have 3 times more people, more men than Ukraine does to fight? Absolutely. So even if the ratios are, as you say, they're not, but just for argument's sake, let's say that they are. The Russians have the manpower to expend in this way. The Ukrainians do not. Ukrainians are still losing. So if we're going to ignore all logic and reason and go with your cope position that the Russians are losing 3 times more men, you just don't see it. They just hide them. Their cemeteries aren't expanding at the same rate as the Ukrainian cemeteries because they just bury the bodies in a trench in the middle of nowhere and you have no idea where they are. Bullshit. Bullshit. Russia is just as open as the United States is. You get obituaries from every grieving family. Go to Media Zona and you can see the open source count of how many Russian soldiers have died, right? And that's going to be less than the actual number, of course, but you can go on and see that they have captured every single obituary, every single funeral report, everything. They do a intensive job, and it's somewhere just north of 100,000 Russian casualties, KIA. So you're fucking wrong. I'm sorry. I don't understand how you can self-delude so hard. It's impressive. Here, I got a banner for you. If you don't take the bodies back, does it mean they're not dead? Well, yeah, that's what the Ukrainians were trying. The Russians were sitting over the border with thousands of Ukrainian bodies in freezer trucks, and the Ukrainians were refusing to take them until the press got so bad and the families in Ukraine got so angry that they were forced to take them back. Because when you take bodies back, you have to pay family benefits. The Ukrainian economy is bankrupt, so they can't do that. There's promises when men go missing. They're not dead, they're unaccounted for. When men come back in freezer trucks, you have to pay their families, and reality starts setting in that the Russians have 8,000 dead Ukrainians in freezers, and the Ukrainians have 51, 27, 34. That's the reality. And if you don't like reality, have fun living in a fantasy. I can't tell you to not do that. Do you drink alcohol? Rarely. Rarely. Socially. If somebody's drinking around me, I'll have a drink, but no, I do not drink alcohol. I mean, I enjoy like whiskey, like I have a favorite alcohol, but I don't drink. I think it's poison. It's literally the worst thing you can do for yourself. How many times did you visit Epstein's Island? Never. Never one time. And if I did, I was probably just snorkeling off of the coast or something. I was not doing anything nefarious. Guys, not everybody who goes to it. Like, I went to Cozumel off Cancun. Did I do something bad on the island, or was I just snorkeling and scuba diving? That's funny. Did you drink on Epstein's Island? Socially. Scott Starrett is a social media grifter. Scott Starrett is my father, so he is not a social media grifter. Scott's son Starrett is also not a social media grifter because I don't make any money. This is not my living. Do I ever ask for money? Do I ever run ads? Do I ever sell? Do I ever shill or sell out? No. I make like a couple $100 off of YouTube every month. Like, what are you talking about, dude? If I quit this tomorrow, my life doesn't change. So no, I don't know what like, you have to have a grift if you're grifting. I'm not grifting. I'm just providing free open source information. You can just not follow me. And supplement salesman, a job I had when I was 19. I love this. There's one post on the Vodnik soup that talks about me being a supplement salesman, and that's just what I am now for the rest of my life. It was like my first job. Did none of you have like a job at Walmart or like a job at like a fast food place ever. Like anybody work at like Five Guys? I worked there for 3 days, quit, hated it, hate fast food. But no, I'm a supplement salesman for sure. From Albuquerque. Well, he got that right. He does not know anyone serving in the RUAF. That's not true. I have multiple sources. How do you just explain this? Like, how do you think you know all of this information? I have a friend who is in Moscow in the Russian armed forces, like that I've talked to since day one of this conflict. So you're just wrong. His only sources are pro-Russian MOD claims. I never post MOD claims, ever. I constantly say any MOD is there to propagandize and lie to you. I say, don't listen to the Russian MOD because they lie constantly. Don't listen to the Ukrainian MOD because all they do is lie. The fuck is happening? Like, you don't even know me. And I love that you're here and you're giving me engagement and you're helping my grift. Oh, I'm grifting so hard right now, boys. I love these live streams so much. Scott is on Shroom when he does these videos. No, I'm on Shroom all the other times. Because shrooms are so sick, and so is acid, and so is marijuana. If you can control yourself and do it properly and do it safely and actually benefit from it and get your ego checked regularly. But no, I do like a sobriety morning before I do these live streams, because I have come on here after I've like hit a bowl or something, and I just cannot maintain a train of thought. I get talking about something, I change it to something else, and then I lose what I was talking about. No, I actually hit the nick while I'm doing this to keep me lasered in. But I appreciate that. That's funny. Beer is good. Beer tastes like piss. If you like beer, that's awesome. I know so many people that love it, but it just tastes like fermented piss. I don't know how people drink it. Do you think Ukraine just doesn't freeze RU bodies, so instead they rot away somewhere on the fought battles? Is this maybe a factor? Potentially, but it's actually very propaganda-wise beneficial for the Ukrainians to collect Russian bodies. So yeah, there's definitely Russian bodies that are just rotting out in the field, but there's also Ukrainian bodies that are also rotting out in the field. So I would say it negates both sides in terms of overall statistics. Scott is an American hero farming tears. He sells the salt for profit. The ultimate grift, boys. What do you think the real ratio is? In my opinion, it's 1.5 in either side's favor. I think that the Ukrainians have probably taken 2 to 2.5 times the losses that the Russians have. And the reason why I think this is, and this was not early war, this is more later war. It has gotten progressively worse since about Bakhmut. It's just gotten worse and worse and worse. Primarily, the Russians fire hundreds of missiles every month. They launch thousands of glide bombs every month. They launch hundreds of drones that are actually large drones that are causing casualties, like Garens kill people. The Ukrainian drones that fly into Russia and hit like refineries don't usually kill people. So I would say that if a military object is hit by a Garen with a 90 kg explosive warhead, it's going to do a lot more damage than a little Ukrainian drone that was sent in and is meant to hit something soft and cause some material damage. So there's that, right? That just the overall firepower concentration is so in favor of the Russians that we're not even counting casualties that the Ukrainians take deep, right? When an Iskander hits a training field, when an Iskander hits a deployment point for Ukrainian soldiers, when 4 glide bombs completely level a house and you're like, God damn, whatever was in there is gone. You're right. It is atomized and those bodies are never counted. So I think it's actually higher. And I think you're going to see the actual results as soon as the Ukrainian government collapses. People are going to be looking for their loved ones, and there will eventually be a tally, and you are going to realize how catastrophic the death toll has been on the Ukrainians. And I'm not just saying that for any like They have their own manpower issues. If they didn't have such losses, they would not have the manpower issues they have. Meanwhile, the Russians just keep increasing the number of men that they have inside of the country. So it's hard to be specific and exact, but I would say double. I would think double is probably realistic. Question, does Andler Holenda have some weird sexual fetish for dead Russian soldiers? I think a lot of them do. I think a lot of them actually don't give a fuck about Ukraine at all, and they just hate Russia because they want to hate something, and that kind of unifies them and gives them a direction. And they've been told by their Slavic parents or whatever that the Soviets were the worst thing ever, and that's been their entire life growing up. Whether you're Polish or Baltic or Ukrainian, and there's some reasonable, you have a right to be angry about what happened in the past, but you're also talking about people who aren't in power anymore, who are dead. So it's like, Scott is raging angry. Yo, yeah, I'm pissed. You see me over here, I'm just so goddamn mad. I'm so angry. LO, that guy thinks he doxed you. Yeah, well, he didn't. I wasn't even anonymous before I got doxed. So is Scott Alex Jones? I hope not. I hope I'm not hundreds of millions of dollars in debt because of lawsuits. LOL, I love the trolls. I do too. It's my favorite part. And I give them way too much attention because it's my favorite part about Twitter too. I love just arguing. Like arguing is like one of my favorite things. I can feel it in my soul. Love it. Show us your Johnson for $10. Come on, I'm not cheap. I'm not cheap like that. How about 10,000 W's? When the Russians retreat, it's called Putin's army is running, but when they go on the offensive, it's called the Russian army is gaining ground. Why does it always happen like that? Because are you saying why don't they call it Putin's army is advancing? I don't know. Because it's all about embarrassment. It's all about character assassination. That's the only thing that the West is ever capable of doing. Like they never actually, in their propaganda, they never actually make arguments or give logic and reason to what they're doing. It's always just character assassination. Putin is Hitler, right? The Iranians are Hitler. Everybody's Hitler. Like that's the go-to. Like there's no, hey, they don't actually have a nuke. They're developing a nuke and they're going to use it on Israel the second they get it. The fuck are you talking about? Then they get nuked back. What are you talking about? That doesn't even make sense. They're just a suicidal death regime that just wants to end themselves, except every time they get into a conflict, they show extreme restraint and are always at the negotiating table. Ooh la la, right? So yeah, no, it's just like it's just propaganda terms. Bro only answers negative troll comments. That's not true, brother. That's not true. Question. I already answered that one. Dude, you are the man. Macron thinks he's Napoleon now. Was Napoleon married to a tranny? Remind me. I don't think so. This is weed plus alcohol, dude. Yeah, I'm plastered right now. I'm absolutely shit-faced. I'm 6 beers deep. Hate beer, but I'm 6 beers deep, 2 whiskeys, and I've just been ripping bowls all day, and I still am able to argue with you and do a full live stream in front of 3,700 people. Sweet. Only cold beer. Well, yeah, not hot beer. Scott, how do you know the taste of piss? They call me the Squirt King, bro. I'm pretty sure that's like 90% piss. Okay, this is getting inappropriate. Inappropriate, boys. Keep it civil in here. Question, could Russia end the war in 24 hours using an EMP? Also did a porcupine tank take 60 drone hits? Yeah, the one with the, if you see it's not really a porcupine tank. It's just I would say it's like a sombrero tank. It has like thick pieces of twisted steel, I guess. It's like the steel cable hanging off of the roof in kind of like a sombrero fashion. And the Ukrainians claimed it took 60 drone hits to kill that one just because it's so encompassed in this the steel wiring, I guess you would call it cables, steel cables, that it just sort of makes the drones bounce off. And it's hard to get a good actual direct impact because it kind of moves with the tank. So when the drones hit, it doesn't penetrate the right way. But it's also really hard to make those porcupine tanks like that. So you know what fermented piss tastes like? No, I don't. Could they end the war in 24 hours using an EMP? It's such a crazy hypothetical because if they did actually try to use an EMP, it would bring so much negative attention. It's like using a nuke. I mean, that's pretty litty, right? So I would say probably not. The war would escalate very quick in 24 hours. Ukrainian soldiers died for their country. Show some respect, Scotty. Fuck no. People who are, I feel bad for like Ukrainian citizens who are being gang forced, pushed into vans and sent to training facilities where they hang out for a week, and then they're sent to the front line where they die. Like, I feel bad for innocent men that's happening to them, who fight the mobilization officers who are forcing them via violence into trenches. Yeah, I feel bad for those guys. But in general, I have a hard time feeling bad for people who, for so many years, so blindly went along with fake promises from the United States and this anti-Russian position when they themselves are Russian. It's incredibly stupid, in my opinion. And the fact that they went along with it so heavily and bought into it so hard and fought for as long as they have, haven't they turned on their government? Their government is killing Ukrainian civilians. Well, I mean, they're not civilians once you put them into vans and send them to the front, but they're killing more Ukrainian civilians than the Russians are. So, I mean, I don't know. Take down your own government. Go fight your own government. Protest. Go do that and go shoot somebody. Right? If you know you're going to go die in a trench, go execute the guy who's going to send you there. Right? Do something. But no, I don't know. I feel bad. Like I said, I feel bad for the innocent people who have no want to go fight and they're forced to go fight. But there's also a lot of really big pieces of shit in the Ukrainian military with a lot of really trashy tattoos, a lot of Nazi tattoos. Not the biggest fan of those people, just in general. And not because they're, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not a big fan. 1 Ukrainian to 3 Russians. Keep repeating it. Just mantra, 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 mantra. The Russian economy is about to collapse any day now. Any day now. The sanctions are going to work. 200,000 Ukrainians dead, but 600 million Russians. Just keep saying it. Repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. Generational trauma is real. It is very real. It is very, 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 very real. Yeah, I hate Italians for this exact reason. They were so mean to my parents. I'm just kidding. No. Yes, it is very real. And it is instilled in people from when they're very, very young, right? It's just from the second you're born, all you hear anytime anything's on the news about a certain country or a certain group of people or whatever, if all you're hearing when you're a kid is they're bad, they're evil, they killed grandpa, they did this, they did that, they did this, they did that. Yeah, you're going to develop that hateful position very quickly, for sure. Do you think we will see a Czechoslovakian policy on Ukraine, meaning that Russia will install a friendly regime in Kiev after a peace treaty is signed? Potentially. It just depends on how everything winds up at the end of this. It's honestly hard to know. If it ends in a way that's less positive for the Russians, maybe the 4 oblasts or something of that nature, then you will see potentially a Russian puppet get put in after the war. But also, Ukraine has been at war with Russia for 4 years. I think it's going to be kind of hard to sell that to the Ukrainian people. It will probably not be the most popular puppet if it is a puppet. Opinion on history legends. I think he does a great job making videos that are just completely different than mine. I think he's funny. I think he has good script writing for his videos. I don't have the mental bandwidth to do editing and stuff like that. So I just do these super lazy hour and 38-minute live streams because I like the way it's more interactive and everything. Crash out? I always crash out. I crash out every episode. I am like, oh man. I'm kind of like what's his name? He's like the guy he's like the therapist or the psychologist from Canada. He got in trouble for like language on transgender issues. Jordan Peterson. I'm like Jordan Peterson, where I just start crying. I'll just start crying in the middle of a conversation because I get so emotional about it. I get so angry. I'm gonna crash out about it. Love you too, bro. I thought you stopped smoking marijuana cigarettes. Scott is Jewish. Neat. I'm a Jewy boy. As I talk about the Israelis committing a genocide in Gaza and openly detest the state of Israel. I guess that doesn't make me Jewish. I guess that would make me like anti-Zionist or anti-Israeli. Do you see the curls, bro? Do you see the curls? Alcohol is cool. It makes you happy. It makes you so sick though. And because like I don't have like a shut off. Like that's like my brain. Like once I get going, once my inhibitions are down as well, I am like the easiest person to peer pressure. You'd be like, you won't go jump in the ocean. I'm already in the ocean. Like, you know, like you won't go do this. You won't take another shot. You won't do another shot with me. Boom, I'm there. So I just have to like regulate myself because I love going crazy. That's like my favorite thing, going in on something all the way, 100%. And if I do that with alcohol, I just throw up all night. And I don't like doing that. I used to have really bad migraines when I was younger. They haven't happened in a couple of years now, kind of since I started smoking weed, actually. But I used to get horrible migraines, and I'd be up from like 2 till 6, just puking and dry heaving in the toilet. Disgusting. It's like my least favorite thing. I'm like a professional thrower upper though, because I've done it so much. I know when it's happening. I know how to manage it. I'm like the ultimate boot and rally guy. Like I can just get it out of my system and then go back to what I'm doing because I've done that my entire life. Xanax is the worst drug, probably. Benzos, they're super addictive for people with personalities like that. I've had Xanax before. It's okay. It's not like my favorite thing. I'm not a big downer guy. Weed is a little different because it's more just like I'm not doing anything, and I can just, if I stop, it's gone in an hour. But like Xanax and stuff like that, like real downers, like opioids and stuff like that, they're just crazy and they're so bad for you. Hey Gringo, you like Venom of the River Toad? I'm trying to think. I don't know what that is exactly. I've heard it before. I don't know if you're talking about like tequila, because if you're talking about tequila, I love tequila. That's what I like to drink when I drink is tequila because it just is the smoothest. All right, guys, I think that's where I'm going to wrap it up. You are one of the few Western analysts I follow regularly to stay up to date on the war. Clear, reasonable, and no loud cheerleading. Thanks for the content. Greetings from St. Petersburg. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Jordan Peterson is such an asshole. Yeah, but he cries, and he's so emotional. Scott went bald from the weed. This is true. Self-hating Jew. Very true. Little boy hat. Or little hat boy. Right. I love you guys. You're so funny. Your take on Israel and Syria. Both sides. I want both sides to lose. I think HTS is doing terrible, terrible things in Syria. I was a pro-Assad guy just because I know what stability in that region means, and I know what removing that stability means, and that's what we're seeing. Atrocities being committed. Remember when there were not very many atrocities from like 2018 until 2024 under Assad? And then after Assad, there have only been atrocities in Syria. That's funny how that works, huh? But hey, at least Assad is gone, right? At least we got him out of there. Alcohol literally kills your brain cells. Yes, it does. But it's hard to do. It's hard to care about that when I'm also just huffing paint all day. I think it's just funny to be like the most unhinged drug abuser when you're not. You just talk about it like you are. Like anybody got I went to a bachelor party and I kept asking if anybody had any fentanyl. Anybody got any fentanyl? I need to lean right now. I like to see Scott on Deep Dive. I like to see Scott on Deep Dive. Send him a message. Get me on there. All right, guys. All right. That's where I'm going to wrap it up. Love y'all so much, especially all the people in here talking shit to me. You guys in particular make my show so fun. But more importantly, thank you to all of the people who actually support me, who are actually here to learn and listen. I appreciate you guys most of all. The trolls are just for fun. You guys actually matter to me, and I very much appreciate you all being in here. Have a great day. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will likely see you on, I think, Tuesday. And by Tuesday, I mean Tuesday 3 weeks from now, because I'm going to just keep pushing back the thing. All right, guys, take care. Love y'all, and I will see you on the next one.